Did you ever get a couple like really crappy ones?
Uh, not yet, because when you sign up, they ask you like how kind of crazy you want to be with it. I just told them to go as
Yeah.
crazy as possible, because then you get like really cool flavors.
Like
Yeah.
sometimes they'll have lemonade undertones or like
Yeah, like some really
like
cool crazy ones.
there was another one that was tobacco, and I don't know what it is. Like it doesn't smell or taste at all like tobacco,
Yeah.
but the smell of it is actually like really pleasant. And so like whenever my husband has a cup of coffee in the morning, I know if it's the tobacco one because it always smells really good.
It's probably like hookah, you know?
Yeah, probably.
I was gonna say when you like just the description of tobacco and coffee, I'm like, ugh, but like.
Or he's smoking something a little bit stronger, you know, so it's...
What's up,
Well,
friends?
Hi.
All right. So let's get into it. I don't have much time. I did talk too much, as I always do. It's my fault. But I will say that it was good talks, good conversations, regardless. Now, with that being said, Alessandro had some questions about like the work life in terms of working in studio, like the day in the life of a studio artist. So I'll speak to this for a bit. So, like, what is like a day in, day out type of situation for a professional? Well, it all depends. It really does. And I'll kind of go through the different examples of what it means by it depends. So the first example would be if you work for a film, the productions are much faster, so they usually would want pretty quick turnarounds. That's why you'll find that a lot of artists who work in film tend to be pretty quick, or do stuff like use 3D, photo bashing. Like they'll use techniques and strategies that are a lot more, lack of a better term, just a lot more scrappier, right? Less artistic. It's more just like a tool to just make an image look good, you know? And then when you go into, let's say, game development, the timeline is usually longer. Well, at least for now, it's longer. We'll see how it goes in the coming years. But that longer dev time usually allows artists to tend to be a little more artistic, you know? And so the turnaround is not nearly as big. And plus, video games tend to have their own kind of aesthetic, if you know what I mean, right? Like they tend to not always have to be photorealistic. And this is kind of a good point of like separation. Now, what I usually tell people is that you should just be really good at doing the thing that you can do consistently. I think I spoke to this last class, about how, you know, the day one, you should be able to walk in the doors and do whatever they're asking you to do, you know? So if they're asking you, hey, we want like 5 concepts tomorrow morning, you should be able to provide 5 concepts tomorrow morning, you know? If they're asking you for a fully rendered character by the end of the week, you should have a fully rendered character by the end of the week. Now, in most cases, studios won't tell you like that explicitly. Okay, they'll give you kind of a general deadline on when they would want stuff. They're like, you know, like we want something by the end of the week, but they won't necessarily like we want a finished image. They won't necessarily say we want like 20 thumbnails. Usually, you should say something like they're like, hey, you know, we want to do these concepts, like we want you to do some rough sketches, right? They don't necessarily know how to tell you how to work, right? And so what they'll do is they'll see that you have a good portfolio, they see that you have some good iterations and good sketches, and some more like, you know, experienced veterans will have a good insight about like what that means to do, you know, sketches and thumbnails. But some people might not. In fact, a lot more than you would imagine. You know? And the point I'm making is that, you know, you should be able to tell them, okay, you want, you know, the X amount of sketches. Okay, I'll get you about 5 by the end of the week. Okay? Or, hey, you know, this deadline is by the end of the week. to have something to show to, like, I don't know, to their boss, or maybe they want to begin, moving into final stages. You can kind of be like, okay, we can meet tomorrow. Excuse me. Like, you can say, I can have sketches tomorrow, and we can take a look at them then, and then the next day, and then on Thursday I'll kind of polish the ones that we like,
Mhm.
A lot of clients don't actually know what they want all the time, like, they're not going to give you very clear guidance. They just know what they want visual designs for. Okay. They just don't know whether or not, they don't know for sure whether or not you can execute in a way that's going to be helpful for them to kind of like sign off on. Make sense? Like, they just won't be able to be like, oh yeah, like, this person's going to clearly be able to finish in a week. Like, they want you to do that, but they don't really realize that they themselves might be the problem, meaning that they may be giving you too much feedback, or maybe too little feedback, lack of clarity, or they're indecisive. And so then some thoughtful directors will be able to recognize that it's their fault, that it's being lagged a little bit. Okay. And so then they will kind of extend the deadline a bit, but sometimes they have to stop extending the deadline, because on their end they are dealing with executives that are like, hey, what's going on here? Where's, like, the final product? Because they themselves, the directors, are constantly at odds with their own creative vision, so this idea of, like, what does it look like it's not the same anywhere and everywhere, right? Like, I mentioned Rockstar Games, I mentioned Nanada, because those are great examples of, like, when shit is not completely under control, you know what I mean? And yet they still make quality products, right? But they're also known for studios that have huge turnovers, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Meaning that people leave the studio very often and very frequently. Okay, especially senior level artists. And what makes it sad is that then they hire a bunch of junior level artists who are very green and really excited to work, and they don't realize that they're like doing grunt work, where senior level is like, this is a madhouse, and to say, like, there's one way or another, like, I'm trying to kind of give you a bigger, broader understanding of what you should be focusing on, is what you are capable of doing. So then when you are offered the job, you don't lie. Okay. And if they don't give you the job, then, you may have dodged a bullet, not because, you missed out on an opportunity, but you might have really, really did a poor job working with this studio. And I know this from personal experience. Okay. Right. It's not worth it. You end up building a bad reputation with a couple of individuals. Now, luckily for me, when I did those things, and I have built some bad relationships, I've grown as an individual, and I have had an opportunity to go back and talk to some of these people, be like, hey, I'm like, dude, I was stupid. Yeah, I didn't know any better, and I wasn't a dick. I wasn't mean about these types of situations. It's just that they were expecting me to be able to pull stuff, but I kept on saying, yeah, I can do it, I can do it, I can do it, I can do it. And then it just was never happening,
Mhm.
So it's just smart, because you don't want to be in these situations,
For sure.
like, the money wasn't worth it, is what I'm getting at. When I got paid ultimately for the lesson that I learned, you know? But if you are guiding the conversation on how much work can be done and how you can do it, that's awesome. That's a good place to be. And speaking to like recruiters. Now, recruiters may not always know what you're worth, okay? But what recruiters can do is look at your artwork and know that you're good, okay? And they also know if you would fit the culture of the team, meaning that like they can talk to you and see that you're good personality, and also the style in which you paint in, it would fit the style of their projects. Make sense? And so recruiters, like I always tell my students, like sometimes recruiters will tell you one thing. They'll be like, hey, you should have more environments in your art portfolio. This is very consistent. And this type of phrasing comes from the idea that when people who have, like, let's say subpar artwork, recruiters will say like, oh, you need more variety, and then when a student hears that, or somebody who's still trying to get a job in the industry, so then they go and spend all this time like creating variety, right? When then they go to another event and then somebody's like, hey man, you have too much variety, you need to be more specific, like hone in on one skill,
Question or like regarding that specifically,
yeah, of course.
the variety thing, like I've definitely heard like a lot of like professional concept artists be like, or specialize, and like give
Yes,
that kind
ma'am.
of advice. And I think it's like good advice. I just wonder if like, do you think I've seen a lot of like job listings on like ArtStation that are like want like concept artists for environments and characters and props. And I know like a lot of studios have smaller and smaller teams now, and also they want concept artists who can do like 3D stuff. Do you think like the industry is trending towards a need for artists who are more generalized rather than more specialized, or do you think it's still a strong need for specialized artists and it's like going to remain that way for like the foreseeable future?
The short answer is specialize all the way.
Okay.
And then the reality is, yeah, of course, I think having diversibility is not a bad thing. On paper, it makes sense, but man, let's put it to the test. Okay, let's put it to the test. So let's click on a couple artists who I just from their image that I see. Okay, some of these I know, some of these I don't know. Okay. I'm just clicking on what I believe is high quality imagery, okay? On multiple facets of styles, okay? Okay, so Dong L. Let's see what Dong L is. Seems like character model. Cool. High quality, though, right?
Mm-hmm.
Gabriel, that's what Gabriel's about. Characters, cool. High quality. King Young, looks like illustrations. Yep, high quality. Illustrations. Yep. Oh no, characters. Character illustrations. Got it. Caravan, I think this is a studio, so this might be a little bit different. No, illustrations. Cool. Nicholas Cole, good old Nicholas. Stylized animated characters. Got it. Do you see a pattern here?
Yeah.
Okay, so they all specialize. And you don't have to trust me and go through your own likes. You will realize, like, wait a minute.
Do you think it's still going to be that way?
Professionals are saying this, and the professionals that I actually follow literally are doing this. Like, this is amazing pixel art. Pixel art. It's like, there's a reason for this. There's a rationale behind this. Because when you focus, you get good. You get it? Like, when you spread yourself out, it's harder to get good. At like to be super good at every individual discipline is a challenge.
Yeah.
Yes.
No,
like this agree. One artist to get really good at 3D characters or mechs, Chris Stone here, like he lives and breathes this thing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's why he got so good, you know? And if we keep going through the rabbit hole, man, environments, realistic environments. Okay.
So you don't think like that's an element that like might like change in the like future, or like I don't know. Like I guess I was thinking like, okay, like there's a lot of studios.
It will if every piece of their portfolio was at the highest level of a specialist, and that's just very unlikely.
Yeah.
Like if my environments were just as good as my character designs and creature design, as well as my vehicle designs and my super realistic like mech designs with like my stylistic steampunk designs, you know, like if with my pixel art design, you know, like if all of those things, by the way, quite possible to get really good at each and every one of these individual skills. Absolutely. Yeah. But you're going to have time. You need time. Yeah. So by the time I'm 50 or 60, very much this might be true about me. I might be this individual you're referring to. But listen to what I'm saying, though, like how I would have to do that. Okay? Now, these smaller studios, you're right. They are looking for more individualized places. Even some larger studios may start doing this because they're making smaller teams. But here's the thing. Okay? Let's take a look at 343 industries. And let's see if we can find, you don't have concept artists. But let's just look at the character artist, which is a modeling. I mean, it's already specialized. They want you to be good at character modeling. Okay? Environment technical art lead, environment artist, who's good at technical, which would probably mean materials and surfaces and technical stuff and that nature that is related to environments. Right? Yeah, that's totally some person's job. Like an individual. Senior illustration artist. Here you go. This is unpublished art lead. Let's take a look at that. Okay. Skills required: partner with production and art leadership to contribute high-level execution plans. Wait, is this the art lead? No, illustration. Set the bar of excellence. This is super vague. It's like be good at like like working with people.
It was super vague. Yeah.
I guess they're senior. That's what they mean by senior. They want more leadership. But I guess here you go. Required qualifications. Showcase ability of high quality 2D splash illustrations. That's pretty specific.
Yeah.
Experience with 2D illustration asset pipelines. Pretty specific. Expertise in splash, including stylized anatomy, heroic compositions, and cinematic believability. Pretty specific. Adobe Photoshop. Very specific. Okay. And this is a very large studio. Now let's do the math. Why? Why is this a thing? Okay. It makes a lot of sense what you'll see me do. Imagine that you're a large studio that can afford $1 million for your artistic budget. 1 million, right? And then let's say you're a small indie studio that got lucky enough to get an epic grant and have $100,000 to spend on your artistic talent. Okay. And let's say I pay all my artists in this studio handsomely, 6K figures, like $100,000 each. I can hire 10 artists based off of that, right? 10 artists, and I can hire. We can keep it pretty simple. I can hire half and half: 5 character designers and creature designers, and 5 environment designers and prop designers. Right? Yeah. The best of their fields. Best characters, best environments. Now let's look at the $100,000 budget. If I was to pay $100,000, that's my whole budget, and I can only get one artist. So what tends to happen is they look for more generalists, so they can try to get 3 artists, right? And if you look at the numbers, that's roughly about $35,000 to $40,000. Yeah. Yeah. Each an artist. So you not only are you getting paid less, you probably aren't as skilled at any individual thing. And here's the real kicker.
you want to go.
You
for
are
this.
surrounded by. Oh, wait, hold on. I think my wife is calling me. Give me a second. I think my friend called me on accident. Anyway, his baby may have called me. Here's the kicker. These three artists, so you're surrounded by a bunch of other just mediocre artists, right? Your ability to grow from that perspective is very limited.
Yeah, definitely.
Now let's look at the top scenario. You are surrounded by the greatest in their fields, including in your specialized field.
Mm-hmm.
Your room to grow is exponential. So not only are you working for a big studio and you're getting paid a fair wage, you are amongst the elites. So you're only going to keep, it's a compound effect, right?
Getting way better.
Yeah. So it only amplifies your ability to keep getting paid better jobs and keep working at better studios. Yeah,
Gotcha.
you know?
Yeah.
This idea of like, hey, you know, I got to just get my foot in the industry no matter what, I'll just do whatever. It actually could sabotage you in the long term. You know?
Gotcha. Yeah, because you end up doing stuff you don't want to do and getting paid less.
Yeah,
for.
and you get really good at like UI design. And
Yeah.
it's like, that's not what you really care about. And it's not to say you should never do it. I've done plenty of UI design, but it's not the forefront of what I promote. It's not, nor is it the forefront of the things I do, majority of my tasks. It's usually I do it to help out. I love to be a helping hand in the production. Hold on, my friend's calling me again. I don't know what's going on. Here, I'm gonna tell him I'm busy. Give me 1 second.
Are we supposed to be hearing stuff?
No, I think he's.
And that's the moral of the story. I do that every time. So let's imagine that you put Kobe Bryant and LeBron James and Michael Jordan at his prime, you know, some of the most elite basketball players in the world, right? Against our class, this whole class. You know, we outnumber them, but they'll demolish us. And there's a point here, which is that, you know, if you truly want to accelerate your ability, you have to surround yourself with other people that are like this. Okay. There's this great phrase of like, you know, you're only as good as the 5 closest people to you, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if you're only surrounded by, you know, people that are mediocre, then you are also going to be mediocre, right? Or it's going to be more challenging to break out of that. Okay. Yeah. And let me be very frank too. It's like, there's nothing wrong with that either. I actually don't care about mediocrity. I mentioned it earlier. I think I'm actually trying to be there, you know? But it is a fact though, that you are inspired by those who are around the most, you know?
Yeah.
And for me, I have a lot of that with my family in terms of just, you know, social skills and social love, you know? I'm really good at these types of things because of my kids, because of my wife. But artistically, they don't bring anything to the table, dude. Nothing. And so I wanted to work in the studio specifically for this reason.
Yeah.
You know? Because when I worked in the studios, that's exactly what happened. When I used to sit aside from Izzy Madrano when I was at Sony, I learned a lot and I got really good. My values increased rapidly because of this. When I was working at Blizzard, I was sitting around some of the best illustrators and concept artists in the industry. And again, same thing happened.
Quick
Rapid
question.
ability.
Gotcha.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Wait, hold on. Let's what's your quick question, Ahmet?
Going back to the thing when you were telling me practicing basic forms, I'm guessing the answer is probably yes to this. But do you recommend the same thing with that as well, which is like you tell us to time ourselves? So should we time ourselves? Should I time myself and like try to get faster? Like, I'm assuming it's yes, but it just occurred to me.
Yeah. Timing yourself is a tool. You know, it's a tool to quantify what you're trying to get good at, and it's a way to quantify your ability to keep yourself accountable, right? Because if you're trying to paint like a box and stuff with extrusions and it took you 7 hours, but you never timed yourself, it's really hard to gauge if you got better the next day because you did it in 6 hours, right? But if you time yourself, it's like, oh yeah, okay. And I will say timing yourself is usually a better tool to either accomplish stuff like finishing work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a good way to like, it's like a test. You know what I mean? Like, you should study and you should time your studies, but not in an aggressive way, right? Like you should time yourself so that way you don't spend too much time studying one thing for too long. You should time yourself so you can like study and then like after that timer, you test yourself, which is also timed. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so timers are just a great objectifying tool. You know, it just objectifies your reality a lot more. Makes sense? It just makes everything a little more objective. You can see tangible, like there's something measurable. There's a reason why when people say, you know, the best way to kind of lose weight is to count your calories, right? Because when you count your calories, you're like, holy shit, this donut was like 1,000 calories. And I ate 2 of them, and my daily intake is 2,000 calories. So technically, I should stop eating for the rest of the day. You start becoming way more responsible about what goes in your mouth after you start doing stuff like this. You know what I mean? Right. When you don't do that, you just freely, just like this intuitive process of like learning and drawing, whatever, right? It's hard to gauge what you've actually improved. This is why weight training is more attractive than like eating right? Because you go to the gym, you lift up 5 pounds, and you're like, that was tough. And then you go to the gym next week, you lift 10 pounds. Dude, I'm stronger now, right? Versus like, how much calories was this turkey sandwich that I made for myself? You know, with lettuce, the bread, the mayonnaise, the ketchup, like all, like you had to like weigh everything. That's like work, dude. You know? But when you do it, because I've done this, your eyes are just like your mind opens up to like how much you're just engulfing in a day. You know? Mm-hmm. You're like, holy crap, man. Like this meal that I love, I've been eating like every day is like 1,200 calories, right? Like that's so many calories. And I never feel satiated anyway, right? I always feel hungry after. And I snack. And then my snacks are like alone 600 calories. It's like, damn, that's 1,800 calories, you know? Just in like an hour. Dang, dude. You know? And so then you start to be like, okay, what the hell should I start eating? And then you start researching stuff like calorie low meals that fill you up type of stuff, right? Like foods that are high in fiber, essentially, you know?
Yeah.
And you start doing that, you start eating like oatmeal instead of like, I don't know, like eggs. And you feel full with oatmeal longer in the day and you have way more energy, you know? Because you didn't like engulf, you know, 3,000 calories in the morning immediately, like bacon and eggs, you know?
Right.
So timing yourself is that tool. Make sense? Like it's like you're seeing how much time you're putting into things. You're seeing how quickly or how ineffectively you're learning, or how effectively you're learning. It's all measurable. And when it's measurable, you can adjust. There's nothing wrong with doing something wrong, right? There's nothing wrong with doing something slow. It's just now you can see it and you can measure it, and now you can adjust a bit. You can adjust around it versus just like, you know what I mean? Like just winging it, putting your finger to the wind and seeing where the breeze takes you, you know?
Right.
And you've done this already a couple times and it's already worked out for you. So you're right. Like you already kind of know the answer. And I've been, trying to convince many of you, it's like, it is very simple. It's actually not as complicated as many people want it to be. Right.
Right.
It's just boring and laborious. And
Right.
that's the trick. That's actually the secret. It's like if I was to create a P90X program, it'd be like P90X, and 90 would actually mean 90 months. You know what I mean? And it's like you have to do 90 months of training to get physically fit and healthy forever. Yeah. Like if you do this for 90 months straight, you got it, dude. What is that? That's like more than like 10 years easily, right?
Yeah, I think
No. That's close to 10 years.
Like 8 years.
Yeah, it's like 8 years. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's about right. Actually, that actually is about right. Like, especially for mastery, like getting close to 8 years, you should be close to mastery at your skill. Absolutely. I'm gonna start saying that now. P90X, as in 9 months or 90 months.
So, the one thing I want to ask, when you said not to be too aggressive when timing myself, when I'm like, let's say, for example, practicing the forms or doing a study, what do you mean by that exactly? In the sense of like not being aggressive, like don't try to like do a study in like 15 minutes is what you're saying?
Yeah. Just be meaningful. Exactly. Just timing yourself. Whenever you're doing, let's say, like an assignment that you have to get done, that has to be a little bit more aggressive, right? Because you're trying to be more timely. But timing yourself in terms of a study is more of a tool to learn. So you don't want to like be like, okay, everything's got to be under half an hour, right? No, that's like if you need like 2 hours to study, then spend 2 hours. But like measure that. That's all, right? And then when you do your test, if you need to give yourself an hour, then give yourself an hour, right? Just measure it so that when you do it next week, you do it again under an hour. Make sense? Otherwise, you don't know, right? You don't have anything that you're gauging to beat, to correct against. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So I think sometimes when I tell people to time themselves, they think like everything has to be like all in. I got to do it under like half an hour. It's like no. That's like when it's time to do the work. Right, like Usain Bolt said, like training is the hardest part, not racing. But when he races, right, like how long does it take him to finish the race? 10 seconds. Then he's done, and then he goes home, right? But when he trains, he trains for several hours in a day. But those are all measurable training regimens. That's kind of the point. That's why like exercise is more attractive, right?
Mm-hmm.
As a tool to healthy living and weight loss, right? Because it's more like on the nose. It's more obvious like how to get good at that. That's why people don't do a good job of losing weight, right?
Right.
They get real strong, but they still have heart disease. It's called skinny fat, right? Where they look good, but then underneath all that, they're dying. They're pre-diabetic and they have cardiovascular disease.
Right.
Anyway, I think someone else was going to ask something that was leading into some of the other points I was making.
Question, unless anybody else wants to go first.
Yeah, well, I think you had some more questions, Alessandro, but I'll just hold off on those and let some others have some questions, if you don't mind. I'm sure you don't.
That's fine.
Yeah. So go ahead.
So I was going to ask, like, so I've heard a lot of people say, like, oh, if you want to get a job, if you want to break into the industry, like, you've got to go to conventions, you've got to meet people, you know what I mean? You've got to make those personal connections, because, like,
I have said this.
yeah, if you're just applying for a job that's not like, useful. I guess like I was asking for any advice you have for like dealing with this in like the corona times where we won't be able to go to events or meet people in person for the foreseeable future, at least in the States anyway.
Yeah, so I will say this. Think of it in a different context. The best way to really get jobs is to do the very thing that you just said, like go to conventions, talk to people. But it's not the only way. So fundamentally, the reason why it's the best way is that you're in front of the person and you can state your case in a realistic and real-time situation. Okay? That's why it's helpful. But you could do this indirectly by becoming really popular online, right? Like building a strong social network presence, You can do this by going to e-events, which is going to be the thing this year. There's a lot of electronic events with portfolio reviews.
Lightbox. Are you going like I know?
Yeah, they're going to do that. It's going to be cool too. I can't say too much more, but it's going to be pretty cool.
I remember last year
do
they had like people look at your portfolio and lots of hiring spots and this and that. Is there going to be like a similar thing? Do you know or no?
Yeah, I can't talk too much about that. I'm just saying. Yeah, I'm just saying. If there's a will, there's a way. That's all. I get lots of jobs, opportunities, and I haven't been to an event in literally a year or two, like almost a year and a half. Okay. So how is this possible? Well, I make a lot of connections, offline and online. Okay. Some of my closest friends I made through online. Okay. Like I have strategies that I am eager to employ. Okay. And one of the first things that I did was go online. Right. And I was doing lots of research, and I have a meeting next week with an individual that's going to help me give me some more ideas,
Yeah.
But that's just me, like just going for it, finding people like and stalking them, And it's like not in like a creepy way, but just like in a professional sense, right? Where I like formally introduce myself. I say, hey, I need some more information and stuff. Like this is something that I think a lot of people don't appreciate.
So just to be clear, sorry, like you found somebody
go ahead.
Work with, and then you reached out to them. Is that what you're saying?
No, this is something like in a field that I have no business knowing about. Okay. Right? Like it's one thing to be like, oh yeah, it's like, hey, you're a prestigious artist. Of course you can just do whatever. But how? How did I do that though? I remember I was talking to a friend of mine and she was saying like, well, it's easier for you because you're already established. And I looked at her and I was like, bitch, how do you think I got established? Like you make it seem like I was just born. Yeah, and she just started cracking up too. She was like, oh my gosh, you're right. And I was like you make it seem like I just like woke up and was established. I'm like trying to tell you what I did. I talked to people even when I didn't deserve to talk to them, And I mentioned this before where that part of me is really good. Like I don't care, whatever insecurity that makes you think, well, they're too busy or I'm too shitty or they will never talk to me. Okay. Well, I talked to them and they did talk to me, and I always think of it this way. If they don't want to talk to me, either they are just too busy or they didn't see my message, right? Very reasonable thing that would happen. Right? Or maybe they didn't want to talk to me because they're an asshole. And good. I dodged a bullet.
Yeah.
It's really not crazy, And go ahead.
I was gonna ask one more follow up to that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so if you are like either like responding to a job listing or maybe like reaching out to an individual to try and talk to them or something like that, like specifically more with like the jobs, and you're like, oh man, my resume looks like crap. I don't have any experience, but like, you know, I've put a lot of work in my portfolio, and you see like I've seen a lot of them as like, you know, must have at least so many years of like 3 years of experience and a published game title, and you know,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, like I don't have any of that, but it's like, do you think it'd be worth even applying to those jobs, or would you just be like,
Sure. The worst thing that can happen. Yeah, the
is
worst
they
thing that
just
they
don't
can.
back-
Yeah, they don't reply. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's not like this backlog of like, man, look at all these terrible artists, dude. Yeah,
Or
let's
they're not
keep
gonna
tracks.
say,
Yeah,
oh,
let's
they
keep
apply.
tracks. Yeah, so they can never apply here again. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, they just literally just ignore you. They just like
Okay.
throw you in the trash in the digital trash can, right?
Yeah.
And then you like which is great, because then when you like that's actually what happened to Nixon. My buddy told me he wanted me to apply for the art directing position back like years ago, and I did, and then they turned me down, which is fine. I wasn't mad about it. I was like, I get it. And then when I got to work with them again, the boss was like, oh man, gosh, I wish we hired you back way back then, you know?
Yeah.
But it wasn't like he didn't know, you know, it
Right.
just was like I was just one of the applicants, and I just got, you know, passed on. That's it. It was nothing, no hard feelings. I'm not mad at them. They weren't like keeping tabs on me, and you know, they just felt like I wasn't a good fit. Okay. You know? And now they in hindsight they realize they were wrong. You know? But it's like I don't care. And my ultimate point here, the moral of the story is that, like, you know, people tend to get really caught up in the details, but when you really just sit and think about it, it's really not as complex. It just isn't. And one of the biggest things that I will say about on this topic, about all of this, you know, is that, you know, artists are just generally like more introvert, right? They don't necessarily like to kind of go out and talk and interact with individuals, you know? I was not an artist when I joined this world of artistry, right? I was coming from a background of like drama and like music. So that was always about like going out and talking to folks. So I was already naturally built for this. Even when I was a kid, I was a military kid, and I had to move around a lot and make new friends constantly and consistently, right? So I have a knack for like knowing the pulse of most individuals, and most people are decent human beings, right? They are. And they just forget about their own self-interest. And if you push people enough, they'll do terrible things to each other. Absolutely. Right? There's like this whole book about Nazis that talks about how they were killing, you know, Jewish people during the day, but then go home and be great fathers and husbands. Right? And there's a point being made there that most people are decent unless pushed otherwise. And so why were people Nazis in the first place? Well, Germany was in a real bad place after the First World War, you know? And this guy came around and built great social programs and built up their economy. And he also hated Jews, you know? And so it was like, that's what people signed up for, right? And so when you start to think about that, right? Like, wait a minute, you know, clearly the more contacts I make, the better I have an opportunity. So I need to do what I can. So when I say yes, talking and meeting people at events is one of the best ways, it's because it is. Personal interaction is great. But there's other ways. You can cold email people, you can message people on Facebook, Instagram, you know, what have you. That's a great tool, man. Absolutely. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I will say, and this is really important that I do say this, okay? And I don't want this to get, you know, incredibly, you know, awkward, but the reality is that there is a difference though between dudes and chicks when it comes to this type of thing. And there just is, and I'm going to tell you all about it. Yeah.
Sure.
And the difference is the industry is at this moment is definitely a boys club. It just right now, tons of dudes. When I was at Sony, okay, there used to be two bathrooms for men and women, right?
Mhm.
They turned the women's bathroom into a men's bathroom. So there was 3 bathrooms for men and 1 bathroom for women because logistically it made sense. I think we had maybe 5% staff that were actually women and the rest was men. Okay.
Did the
The
women
whole
just
art
also
team
go
is,
to the men's bathroom?
I'm sorry, say again?
I said, did the women just also go into the men's bathroom then? Was it just like...
No, there's 5% women and 95% dudes.
Right, but you said there were
So,
3 bathrooms. And they were
I'm
all...
sorry, what?
Wait, I thought you said there was only 3 bathrooms and they were all men's rooms.
No. There was 2 bathrooms for each. And so 3 of them
Oh.
became for dudes and 1 was only for ladies. Yes.
Oh, okay, gotcha. I thought they
And
were all
even with
bathrooms.
that,
They were like...
and technically
yeah.
still, yeah, and technically and logistically speaking, some of the women's bathrooms should have been some of the men's bathrooms, you know what I mean? Because that's 25 out of 75%, right? Where you know, the point I'm making is like, and I've seen this almost throughout my whole career, man, right?
Yeah.
And I am going to tell you, like, the worst part of it is because it is a boys' club, right? Now, you may have heard things. You may have heard things on the outside where there is this kind of more misogynistic or sexist approach where women aren't hired for whatever reason on merit. I'm going to tell you right now, that's not true. That part specifically is just not true. Okay? The part that is true is that dudes are fucking perverts. Absolutely. That is fucking true. I have seen this many times. Okay?
Yeah.
The other thing is not. Here's why. I have been in rooms where we were interviewing and putting out applications and asking people to take these jobs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mostly dudes. It's a numbers game.
Mm-hmm.
When I was working at Blizzard and we were hiring some new staff, all the applicants were male. When I was at Sony, all the applicants were male. So whenever I see online people are like, women aren't given a chance, I'm like, where are the women, dude?
Yeah.
You know? And I'm telling you, it's not a merit thing. Because some of my favorite artists that I've ever worked with were women. Laura Austin, Yana Schwimmer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Carla Ortiz.
She's
Fucking
amazing.
the best.
Yeah.
It's not a merit thing. Trust me, it just isn't. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And so I have female students in my class, and they always, whenever this kind of stuff comes up, I try to say, look, you got to put your hat in the race, dude. Okay? Otherwise, it's going to stay this way for fucking forever. Okay? It just is. And the way to stop this kind of stupid, the other stuff that is bad that I talked about earlier, is we need to level out the playing field. Okay? And I think on the surface, it looks really bad. It looks like the dudes don't want women to come in. But I'm trying to say the opposite is true. Dudes want women to come in so they can sexually abuse them, right? Like they want more ladies in there so they can like hook up with them, you know? And it's not professional and it's not right. But if you start to outnumber them, or not outnumber, but like you start to level out the playing field, that's going to be more and more obviously egregious and inappropriate, right? And it is cool to see that there is some justice happening whenever these cases are coming out, right? But I also feel that a lot of the rationale for why there's such a disparity, like difference, I think people are focused on the wrong point, okay? Like, I think they're looking at all the sexual abuse and the harassment, right? And there's like other stuff that's like a little bit more innocent and a little bit less like controversial, but it is kind of like stupid. Where, you know, guys, we talk about stupid stuff when it's just a bunch of guys. You know what I mean? And that makes women uncomfortable. I've experienced this on the opposite side when I went to go gay clubs with my best friend. You know, I was uncomfortable at times. Like I remember one time I was in the stall and the guy was just like straight up just looking over at my junk. And I was like, oh, okay, this is what it feels like. I get it. You know? So I understand. But it's not like all gay people are like, you know, I don't then go to the extreme, you know?
Yeah.
I just
it's
like, I get
that,
it,
yeah.
dude. In fact, I had some lesbian friends and they were telling me like they wish there was more lesbian clubs. And I was like, what do you mean? They're like, no, like if you think of gay clubs, you think of just a bunch of dudes. And I was like, oh man, what the? It's like even in the gay community, dudes like taking over, dude. There's a boys club there. And I'm like, wow, that's interesting. Like some of the most popular makeup artists are men. Women can't get a break. Dude. And so it's like it's something about that assertiveness that just somehow just dudes for whatever reason have a lot of, right? And as much as that might sound bad, it's just like I'm trying to say, like, don't let that be the standard. Okay? That's all I'm getting at.
Get in there and
Yes. And I did a talk, and this was brought up during the talk. They were like, why aren't there enough women in the industry, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, look, it's not, I told them exactly what I said to you, right? And a lot of people were like, oh, yeah. And then they're like, well, what about this one guy who like harassed me and like said that? And I was like, well, you literally had the worst life, man. Like you interacted with the worst of them, right? And also this was in Spain. So I was like, and I don't know how Spain rolls. I don't live here. I don't know enough about it, you know? So there might still be some social issues that, you know, maybe in America we've gotten past a little bit, you know? And then, but then, you know, we had 3 women on the panel. And then one of the women was like an actual recruiter. Like she was an artist herself, but she also recruited artists. And she's like, she said the same thing I said. She's like, I actually rarely get applications from women.
Yeah.
Right. And then one of the other female panelists is like, well, you know, I could have worked with you. I could have applied, you know?
Yeah.
And then this was perfect. She turned around, the recruiter, and she says, I did reach out to you and you declined. You know, I think you said you were like taking a break because I think you had your kid. And I was just like, oh, here we go. You know? And there's nothing wrong with taking a break. There's nothing wrong with having your reasons to turn down a job. It's just this narrative that like the industry is not ready. Like that's just not true. It just isn't. I'm promising you. Okay.
Yeah.
And it was crazy because after the talk, one of the female artists in the audience really resonated what I said to her. Well, when I said to everybody, and she came to my wife and she was like, oh man, like what AJ said really resonated with me. Like I never go to events. This is my first event I've ever went to. And even now, like I don't really want to like talk to anybody or interact, you know? And I'm like, I should though, right? Like I really should. And my wife like looked at her, and my wife is very much not like this. She's totally like walks up to people and socializes, you know? And she was just like kind of like laughing. She's like, yeah, why are you telling me? Tell my husband. He's like, why are you telling me that you love what he said? Tell him that you love what he said. And she said, you are proving his point. And then she's like, oh my God, like it's Inception, it's the meta. And so she did talk to me, and I heard she said the same things, and I was laughing. I was like, yeah, totally, man. And I looked at her portfolio and I was like, yep, you are great. It's not that you're not great. You're not putting yourself out there. And she's like, oh, you're right. I need to do that. I'm going to start doing it. And I was like, yeah. And then she said, also, your wife invited me to go salsa dancing. I'm going to go salsa dancing. And I was like, oh, awesome. She's like, I've never done it before. My boyfriend was like, what the hell? Who are you? And I was like, this is super cute, man. Go for it. Have a good time. And she did. And she went and did all that stuff. And then a month later, she messages me on Instagram. She says, hey,
she got a job?
I got a job.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It is awesome. Dude, my own fucking daughter, dude, she was just like, only boys can be astronauts. I like slapped her and I was like, the fuck? Who told you this? Nobody told her. She just only saw dudes. So I do think that there's something about that, the perception.
No, it gets into people's heads. Like I was trying to explain that to my brother and he was like, blah, 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 it's not true. I was like, no, it totally does. And you don't even, it's like it's on this like conscious level. You don't even realize it, you know?
Yeah.
It is a real thing.
Like even in the community for like programmers as well, because I actually went to, there's a convention in Utah called Open West, and they talk mostly about computer programming. Like they go over like Python and they go over like Ruby and they'll go over C++ and all of that fun stuff. And there was a a whole community of women just talking about how they struggle with imposter syndrome because there's not very many women that work in that industry. And
it's like a vicious cycle, man.
Yeah. They kind of talked about the similar problems as well.
Yeah. And it's just the point I'm trying to make, you know, and men have the same issue, right? Like it is frowned upon to kind of like be like a caregiver as a man, right? For instance, like being a nurse, a teacher at like, I don't know, like elementary level or kindergarten, right? Like that's kind of like looked at as like you're not really like macho if you take on these types of opportunities. Yeah, and the scoffing is appropriate, right? It is silly, you know?
Yeah.
But that's kind of the thing. It's so this is the thing that I'm trying to get across, you know? And I'm speaking to, you know, the female students I have here. I just want you guys to be aware of this, you know, that don't let any kind of preconceived notions or insecurities that might drive you away, whatever those may be. And this is true for dudes as well, obviously. But like I'm saying, there is a bit more of like intimidation, right? And then once you get in, then we start talking about how to deal with these creeps. Okay. And I will say they're outnumbered. Okay. So you guys are, especially nowadays, there is a lot more respect for this type of situation. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot more opportunity to speak out and not be scolded. Like before, people would get fired for this type of stuff, which is terrible. But now it's like the opposite's happening. Like executives are starting to get executive action, right? And I always tell like my female students this, especially if they have any sense of attractiveness to them, that you should try to lead with your work as much as possible. And again, it sounds bad, but it's like you really want to be sure that you got the job because you're fucking tight. Okay? You want to be 100% sure, because if there's any doubt that you got the job because maybe the guy just was attracted to you that hired you, unless it was like a female recruiter and she has no interest in that, then great. Then you have no insecurity there, right? You don't have to have any disillusion. Because I don't have that problem, right? Like when I would go to events and people would review my work, it would be other dudes usually, and they'll be like, "You're shitty. This is what you should work on," right? They're not trying to flirt with me, dude. They're not trying to like be nice just because, right? Like my wife, like when she goes out, there's this thing that she says. She's like, "Don't worry, I'll get sponsors," because my wife is incredibly beautiful, and so when she says she gets sponsors, she means like she'll just make friends with some guys at the bar and they'll just buy her drinks the whole night. She'll tell them that she's married. She'll tell them that there's no interest of any kind. And yet dudes will still just fucking buy her drinks just because she's a beautiful person. And I'm like, totally, man. Like save that money, dude. You know? I'm like, I'm not here to like fight against that, dude. There's nothing wrong with this. And so, but do you see my point? Like that's the thing. Like beautiful people get a pass, man. They definitely do. And if you have any sense of attractiveness, that's something that actually is a detriment to self-growth. Okay? Yeah. This is why that stereotype, and it is a stereotype, not all beautiful people are dense, but there is a stereotype to why that is, because there's kind of theory around the idea that when you are incredibly attractive, right, there's less need to kind of adjust, where us normies, right, the only reason I was able to even get my wife was because of my charisma, right? And I'm not trying to say I'm like the ugliest person or whatever. I'm saying like there's clearly better looking cats that are in her level, you know, but I got those terms, dude. And so, but that's because I'm not the best looking individual. And but I'm very, very aware of this, and I'm like, all right, I'll just pull my other strengths, dude. You know.
I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about, AJ. You have an epic beard. That's all that you need.
I think only dudes think that beards are attractive. My wife does not.
Actually,
think so.
that's not true.
Okay,
my,
so maybe
my husband, like, he shaves all the time, and it drives me so nuts. He's like, oh,
I think some beard is a good.
Yeah,
Oh, go ahead.
we need more guys that look like Ragnar Lothbrok.
Yeah. But okay, so to bring it back though, I just want to say, like, these are realities that I think some people, it's a little taboo, and I get it, and it's sometimes very sensitive for individuals. Nobody wants to kind of admit some of these things either, right? But it's better to navigate them, and it's no excuse either for people to treat you indifferently, right? Like, there's differently. It should clearly not be that, right? But I'm just saying, I know female artists that I have worked with that were incredibly, they were not as qualified as they needed to be, right? And I can tell that they got in because of some other circumstance, right? And that is not their fault. And they then took that insecurity of inability and escalated it to unnecessary measures, and it's unfortunate, man. And all of the people that I've ever encountered, even male and, like, not just females, but males as well, right? Whenever they are put into a position that they are not qualified for, they always tend to find a exterior factor to put the blame on, right? And like I said, that's why you want to be sure that you got the job, because you're a fucking badass. And I have many female students that I am proud to say that have gotten jobs in the industry. One in which I'm very proud of her because she's now in a leadership position. And I'm like, tight, dude. And she's definitely a hustler. She's working really hard, I can tell. And she started, like, working out too. And I saw her at Lightbox, and she's like fucking shredded. I was like, her legs are like bigger than my whole body. I was like, oh my God. And so she kind of, like, took that mentality and took it elsewhere in her life. And I thought it was great, And so I'm just saying this to kind of keep you, because I know this is one of those things you're like, hey, how do I get exposure? How do I talk to people? Try to lead with your artwork. That's the safest you can be, And then once you get the job and once you're in there, you can feel confident that you're a capable individual, You didn't get there for any other superficial reason. This is the same way I feel about other stuff like a quota type of situation, just hiring people because you need to fill a diversity quota. I think that has the same problem. Where I saw Google was like, oh my God, we have like 70% men and white men and 30% everybody else, women and diverse groups of individuals, right? And they made a concerted, or they made like a asserted effort to diversify. Yeah. And then what ended up happening was that they went from 80%, 80 to 30% to 70 to 30% to 80 to 20%. They got more white men. Okay. And this is them trying to fit those quotas. And what I believe happened, I think they were like, I don't know if they've ever released this, but I think what ended up happening was that they were just hiring people because they fit those measurements that they were looking for, without actually justifying their qualifications. And those people were not qualified as much as they should have been. And then they either got overworked and quit, or they weren't capable of keeping up with the work and got fired. Right. And then they had to find replacements, or the numbers just skewed. You know what I mean? And the solution to this problem of diversity is a bottom-up solution. You need to have like what I'm doing right now, for instance, like educating people who are just starting getting in, like building up their skills, telling them this is what's important, right? Like, focus on the skill, focus on your ability. It is bad business to hire based off of just people's nationalities, right? And ethnicity. It's bad business, because what if the best person, like, let's say you hate black people, okay? You hate women and you hate black people, okay? So you hate black women, right? And one of the greatest artists that could fit in your genre of game happens to be a black woman. Uh-oh. It is bad business then. You have just jeopardize your business. Especially in art, there's plenty of that. Like there's like one individual who only really kind of does that one thing. And this is why the market is globalized, by the way, because a lot of the best talent don't live in America. You know?
Yeah.
And so merit is really hard to like turn down. Get it? Like it's like if you're fucking badass, it's really hard to turn you down, regardless. Unless you're a real asshole, then it's easy. But as long as you're not a real asshole, then you know most people will. But even then, I think still people will hire real assholes because they're like they're so good, you know.
Yeah.
But if you're decent human being and you're really good, yeah, it's really hard to turn you down. Someone's going to bring you in. The best companies will grab you, no problem. You know, they'll fight for you too, actually. And so, I've seen this happen time and time again. And until things start to level out, right? Until we need to be where we need to, like where we belong. This is just the case. This is just how it is at the moment. But it will change. I think with time we'll get our shit together.
Yeah.
You know.
Sure.
And but I will say that especially the game industry, speaking for the game industry, you know, exclusively, they are the most progressive and most open-minded individuals. It's just some of them don't know how to manage social circumstances is all I'm getting at. Okay. Not all of us, like some of us understand, but the majority, also the majority of people do, but like there are still some folks. And I think we're slowly weeding them out or demonstrating that this is not acceptable, which is appropriate. Anyway, hope that gives you some larger insight beyond just like going to events and talking to people. Like there is a there is a alternative variable there that I would want you to understand.
Yeah, definitely. Social media, people, all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there is the case to be made that, you know, when you lead with your artwork, you're in a safer position, and versus like leading with your personality even, because I know people who have YouTube channels, and this is on both genders and all ethnicities. It's like they've made a career around their persona online, and then when they try to divorce themselves from that, people don't follow along. But if you just do artwork that you like and you keep to that, you will reach the audience that will find you, and then they will promote you in the best way possible.
Gotcha.
Like it's funny because when I met Elliot Austin, I didn't know she was a female, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't like, oh, well, now your work is garbage. You know? When I'm on ArtStation hitting likes on all these motherfuckers, I'm not like, oh wait, this is a chick? Oh well, this like, no, it's not how it is. In fact, I'm sure everybody in here and most other artists, even if they actually may be misogynistic, don't do that. You know, like clearly, you know? Yeah. And so that's just shows you the power of like excellent skill. That's all I'm getting at. Mm-hmm. Okay. Could you imagine like a principled misogynist who's just like, what is this? Female? Chinese? You know? I don't think even like a racist misogynist person would do that. I really just don't think they would. They'd be like, this person's awesome. You know? It's just
all their likes.
Yeah, they're just like, who are these Chinese people? Yeah, I doubt it. And if they do, like, welcome, dude, right? And so I trust me, it's not as crazy as people may see. And so be very, very aware. Now, I want to be clear too. I want to have a disclaimer. I'm going to end this class already. I'm not saying that there aren't people that do have these kind of more like regardless of your ability, you still kind of have some sort of stupid perception that you're probably still not as qualified because you're a woman. Okay. Like, I'm not saying that doesn't exist at all. Obviously, there's probably still somebody. I'm just saying I haven't met any. And I've been working in this industry for quite a while. I haven't been in a room where they're like, well, women don't know how to really design. You know, like I haven't heard anything like that, even indirectly, you know? Mm-hmm. It's like, it's not that. It's really like never experienced it, you know? And let me just be clear too, like I have a social network presence and I can see my genders, like the people who follow me, and it's mostly men. which I think is incredibly sad, because I think the things that I teach it's asexual. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? So it's kind of interesting that I am too the problem. Like, I need to find a way to get more of a female audience. But it's not like, again, it's not like I'm actively like, oh, you follow me, and then I tell them to stop following me. Right? I'm not doing any of this. It's just like, do you see my point? Like, the chips are falling as they fall. And I was like, I had some suspicion, so I asked my buddy Ross. I was like, hey, I bet you have a higher female to male ratio.
Like Ross Draws?
Yes,
Like,
and he does.
Oh.
He has 60% female and 40% men.
Huh.
Where I had 80-20. You know, 80% male, 20% female. So I was like, okay, I suspected that was true because of the stylistic tendencies.
Yeah.
Because when I look at the animation field,
There's a lot.
There's a lot of females. Yes, it's actually I think it's a little bit it's more balanced.
Yeah.
But in the games and movies, not at all, dude.
Yeah.
It's like so much of a boys' club, and I think that my suspicions lead me to the kinds of artwork for whatever reason feel more masculine.
Yeah.
And so there's like a larger cultural reason probably why this is happening. I am not advertising. I don't know if you noticed, I'm not advertising boys only, follow me, you know.
Yeah.
But this is what I'm saying. It makes me sad because I don't think that my lessons are clearly lean one way or another. I think all the guys even in here would agree, right? Like, I don't think they would be like, no, you're wrong, AJ. This only speaks to me, the dude. You know? And I don't think anybody agrees with this. Like, obviously what I say and have to say is more, it's really helpful for all artists, in my opinion. I don't think that there's one I leave out.
It's very universal.
Yeah. But my classes are usually mostly dudes, and my audience is mostly dudes. So I've been working on this and thinking about this for a long time. But anyway, that would mean principally I would have to change what I would draw, right, to be able to get to that. And I'm willing to do that. I don't think it's a problem. I'm okay with that. I'm just needing to do it slowly and surely. Bring my audience with me. With that being said, I'm going to roll out here. I had to leave an hour ago, but it was a good and important conversation to be had. Great questions that were asked. And I appreciate all of you guys' hard work. Keep up the pace. Don't be strangers. Talk to each other. Help each other out. And I'll talk to you guys next week. Have a great weekend.
Goodbye.
Have a good
See you
weekend.
next week.
Yep.
Bye.
Cheers. Thank you for watching this video. I appreciate it. Please subscribe to watch more in the future. If you liked the video, I would appreciate a thumbs up. If you like this content, you can go to my website, robotpencil.net, where you can find mentorships, tutorials, and a Patreon to get more exclusive content. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys in my next videos.